So what does content training at Impact actually look like? Let's talk about it with one of our content trainers, Briana Wagenbach. How's it going, Briana?
It's going pretty good. Ready to talk all things content. How are you doing, Austin?
Doing great. And I'm here with the questions coming at you for the people out there. When people get involved with Impact, content is a huge part of what we do and a huge part of it early. How do things exactly get started?
Yes, that is a great question and a question we get just about every day. So we have a few different learning tracks, if you will. One of them is within our mastery program. And so depending on what the need is for the organization that we're working with, we decide is full-blown mastery what you need. In full-blown mastery, there is content training. Can also have content training as a separate service on its own, but we have found most success when you're having your whole organization go through the whole framework of They Ask You Answer and not only just the content writer. Because buy-in is the first thing. It's great to say, hey, we're writing content and it's good content. But unless we have a firm strategy in place that ties back to our overall organizational goals, we can find ourselves just writing content for sake of writing content. And that isn't the type of content that is going to push the needle in terms of ROI. So what we dive deep into in content training is not only the content itself, but how every other person in your organization plays a role in content creation and content promotion. So a big part of that is assignment selling, right? We want our content to get in front of the right people, but also we want our content to shorten our sales conversations. So those sales conversations can be more intentional and help to close deals faster. So with content training, yes, we dive into buy-in and how it touches other areas of the business, but the core of what we dive into is the framework of They Ask You Answer. So making sure that our writing is completely unbiased. We are transparent. We're comprehensive. We follow the 80-20 rule. And I know just about every industry has their own take on the 80-20 rule. So in our industry, what we like to say the 80-20 rule is 80% educational and only 20% promotional. What we'll see, generally speaking, is sales content is almost always flipped the other way. And if you're on the receiving end of that, it doesn't feel awesome to read through stuff that is very salesy. Generally speaking, we click away from that pretty quickly, right? And so we want to do the complete opposite of that. We want our buyers, our partners, our insert target audience here to look at us as a place of trust and a place of education. And through content, that's exactly what we can give them. And that all sounds really nice and fluffy, me just saying that. But of course, there's way more detail, right? And that's what we get into in content training. So what are best practices for writing with They Ask You Answer? What is the big five? And how do I know that I've positioned my content to write on a consistent basis around big five content? And how is my content going to be used by my sales team? And what questions are they legitimately hearing, right? They're the people with the boots on the ground. They're in these conversations. If you asked a salesperson like, hey, what are the top 3 questions that someone's going to ask you when you start a new conversation with them as it relates to whatever product or service you're selling? It is almost like, just able to spit it out right away. We know those questions like the back of our hand because we hear them all the time. So can that information be shared with your content writer so that we can have content for you to utilize within your sales process? So you don't have to spend that sales conversation going through what they're already going to ask. Can we give them that info, ahead of time so that when you have them there live in that combo, you can actually get into what their real worries, fears, concerns, needs, wants are, and let the content essentially do your job for you ahead of that combo.
Awesome.
Um, so yes, there's a lot of different avenues and different directions we can take it, but it truly comes back to what are your organizational goals and how is content going to be the solution to, whatever those problems are that are preventing you from reaching that goal.
Yeah. So it sounds huge and super important. If
Yeah.
I'm a business owner looking to get started, that honestly might sound a little overwhelming to me. Is that something where I am supposed to write all this myself? Am I hiring a writer? And then depending on that, you as a content trainer, are you working with the leadership of a business, or are you working with a writer if somebody hires one?
That's a great question. And it's both. So let's say Austin, you're a CEO and you think this all sounds good, but you're like, I don't have time to write this. I got a lot of stuff on my plate, and writing articles is not one of them. And you're totally right, right? We want somebody in the content manager, content writing role that is their sole job, because this is a full-time job. And when we've had many clients in the past who have tried to do this as a part-time role, or, kind of freelance it out. And I have yet to see someone have really good they ask you answer success with it. But our clients who do are the clients who let us help them hire the person. We are experts here. We know what is the need for the person in this role. So let us help you. We have a full guide that goes through everything in relation to hiring, in relation to what the interview process can look like, and what role impact can play in that process to ensure that you as a CEO, you've got the right person in that role, and you don't have to own all of that on your own because you're already super busy being in a C-suite level job, right? So we'll help you with the hiring, and we'll help you with the onboarding, because what we have seen is sometimes we'll have clients who will say, here's your they ask you answer onboarding guide, and here's your company onboarding guide. And we have those as separate. And there's not to say there's no positives in there, but if I'm the writer and I have two onboarding tracks, in my mind, they're already two separate things, right? So can we work together, we as in myself or whoever your content trainer is, and leadership, to say, let's map out what this is going to look like to put this into one guide, so that when that content manager comes into this role, they already are all over they ask you answer with their learning, and they're not seeing it as something separate from their company.
Okay.
So we'll help you hire, we'll help you onboard, and then we'll ensure that onboarding learning doesn't go wasted. We'll continue meeting with that content writer on a weekly basis, and the content trainer will also be in pretty close communication with leadership or that CEO, whoever that person's boss is, so that there's nothing that goes missed. If I'm seeing anything concerning in the way of this person's writing, it doesn't do me any good to keep that to myself, right? I should bring that to that person in leadership so that they can talk about that internally. And on the flip side of that, when we have big things to celebrate, I don't want to keep those to myself. I want to make sure that content manager gets highlighted in their next newsletter or their next all hands. So yes, on a week by week basis, I'm really working with the content creators, but on probably like a bi-weekly, monthly basis, there's a good open line of communication with whoever their, direct bosses that they report to, so that nothing ends up living in silos. Really, the whole kind of thing, if you will, with they ask you answer is we're all working together and nothing is going missed, and we're not having, side meetings, side silos, if you will, that we're all working towards the same goal but not really collaborating on the work that we're doing. That obviously presents a lot of problems. So just opening it up and making sure everybody is in on everything keeps everything cohesive, but also gives us good opportunities to have some strategic conversations because nobody's left out of the loop.
That's awesome. Yeah, that communication is huge. It's huge. I think the hiring and onboarding is even a bigger point than
Yeah.
a lot of people may think, because that's tricky. And Brianna, I
Yep.
know you are an expert and you're awesome, but are there ways you can help those content managers connect with other people in the field as well as connecting with you?
Yes, another great question. So we've got a couple avenues for any content creator to do that, whether that be a videographer or a content manager. So we have monthly mastermind groups, and these are quite fun because oftentimes as a content writer, you can feel like you're kind of operating in your own world. You got a question related to writing, but maybe nobody else at your organization does any writing. So you don't really have like a good support system to go to. So every month we have an hour call that is for any content manager that we're currently working with who wants to join. And is really cool because number one, those people on that call have your same role, but they're in different industries, and you can hear, what does success look like for them? Is there anything that I can hear from that and mimic within my own organization? On the flip side of that, we'll also share, some challenges other businesses are having. And let's say you're somebody who's having a challenge and you bring it to that mastermind group. Chances are somebody else in that group has gone through that same challenge because they have your same role and you're able to collaborate. Now, another place within content training that is separate from these mastermind groups is short-term content training is one-on-one. And we really work through the basics of the framework of They Ask You Answer and make sure that your writing is as robust as it can be and it's profitable, right? What we're doing is in turn, getting profit for your company. That's the main goal, right? Once we get through the basics in content training, what we've discovered on the training and coaching side is there's only so much that we can get to or get through, if you will, in a one-on-one setting. But there is so much more left to discover when we open up our training to group training. So this is generally like the first kind of like big win in content training is like, you're through the basics, you're crushing it, you're ready for another challenge, group training it is. So the trainer doesn't change. Like it would still, if I was your content trainer one-on-one, I'll still be your content trainer in group training. But we hand pick other clients who are not in your same industry for obvious reasons, but who are in their same, kind of the same track that you are in their They Ask You Answer journey and are working on similar goals. And so that is usually a big celebration when we get to that point in content training. But the coolest part, Austin, is we have events. We have 2 annual events that we host as a company, and getting these people to those events is a really big part of this whole process. And seeing them get to meet in person, not only do they get to meet in person after they've seen someone on screen, and that's cool and that's fine, but they carry those relationships with them long after their time with us. And that is like just the biggest part of all of this. Because even if you finish coaching, what's next? Do you still have that community of other They Ask You Answer content managers? And with the way that our system is set up, you do. So lots of opportunities to meet others.
Can you share a story of a content writer or content manager that you've trained that you've seen as a real success?
Yes. So one of our clients has been our client for many, many years because they keep coming back to us. So if I use their content writer as an example, their very first content writer went through content training, and the goal in content training is, that you're honing this skill set independently and having success. Now, the cool thing about this specific content writer at the time is, they stayed with that company and they learned a ton from impact around They Ask You Answer, so much so that that individual was promoted to head of content. And so when he moved from the writer to the head of content, what did their company do? They came back to us to help hire that writer, to help onboard that writer, so that that writer had the same experience. And regardless of whether they were promoted in the future or not, they still have that strong skill set to ensure that the framework of They Ask You Answer isn't shaken in any way and everybody's fully bought in.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a super cool story. Helping people grow in their careers. That's just a great life goal to begin with. So that's a super cool story. Well, Briana, thank you for sharing your knowledge today. Always love having you on, and we'll see you in the next one.
Sounds good. We'll see you, Austin.
Now, if you're looking to level up or even get started with content strategy at your business, contact us at impactplus.com today to get started with a trainer just like Briana.